I'm Tom Cherry Holmes, and I'm one of the early testers for the Spectranet Ethernet Interface, now available from ByteDelight.com for your ZX Spectrum. Now, I've heard a lot of you asking, what is Spectranet and why would I want one? Well, I'm going to be a bit hyperbolic here and say that this is the last peripheral that you will ever need for your ZX Spectrum. Yes, crazy, I know, but when you hear what I have to say about it and what this thing can do, I think you might just agree with me. The Spectranet, by all appearances, is an Ethernet interface for your ZX Spectrum. It provides a whole host of functionality right out of the box that anybody can use. You don't have to be a programmer. And immediately out of the box, this includes being able to load content, programs, data, whatever, from anywhere on the internet to be used by your ZX Spectrum. Going over it a little bit, you can see that it has an expansion connector. This plugs into the expansion connector on the back of your ZX Spectrum. It has a pass-through so that you can connect other expansion devices onto the back of it. For best results, we highly recommend that you take and plug the Spectranet directly into the back of your ZX Spectrum, and then plug your other devices back into the back of this. It's also worth noting that this particular device uses the same ROM entry points and RSD entry points as devices like the DIV MMC. So if you have a DIV MMC, it is highly recommended that you either disconnect it from the back of your ZX Spectrum or disable it. Some of the other bits and pieces here that you'll see, in addition to the connectors that you have for the Ethernet jack and for the expansion connectors, you also have jumpers. You have a couple of jumpers for enabling and disabling the Spectranet and its associated interrupt. And you also have a jumper here to set what type of machine that you're using to better suit its internal hardware timings. So you have a jumper setting for both a 48 or a 128K spectrum, or a +2 or a +3. As I'm using a 128K clone here, this is a ZX Omni, this seems to work best in the first jumper position. And yes, this works very well with a number of ULA compatible clones. And I have in my possession here for testing a ZX Omni and a ZX Harlequin 128 issue 3B over there on the shelf. So with that, now let's go ahead and plug this into our system here and show what can be done with it. We have right here Spectranet plugged directly into the back of the unit, and we have a ZX HD that is providing my video output to my television here. It's also worth noting, if you don't have a ZX HD and you have an HDMI capable TV, most people do these days, or monitor, I highly recommend that you get one of these devices as well. The video output, as you can see here, is absolutely gorgeous. We'll go ahead and press the reset, and you'll see immediately that the Spectranet ROM kicks into gear and immediately tries to connect to the network. We go ahead and plug in our network here, and at this point it will try by default to use DHCP to automatically get an address from your network. Once it does, we have an addition to the sign-on screen here, which shows the IP address that it got for us. Now at this point, we are presented with 48K basic. Now because of the way the Spectranet works, it tries to take and jump itself, vector all of its custom commands into 48K basic. So even though this happens, any 128K software will still work just fine. This is basically the equivalent of going into USR 0 mode. So with that, we can start typing in Spectranet commands. And just for the sake of utter simplicity here, I'm going to take and load something that I've already configured in this Spectranet directly off of the internet. We do that with the %load command, followed by 2 sets of quotes. And we can see here that we have loaded up a copy of Plato term, and it's about ready to connect to IRATA.ONLINE or any of a number of other Plato hosts that are popping up. We go ahead and connect. And we can see that we're now accessing a very unique online service for retro computing enthusiasts over the internet on our rubber key spectrum. Isn't that amazing? So we'll go ahead and log in as guest here, just to kind of get into the system, just to show that anybody can log into the system to take a look around. And you have access to a whole host of different things that you can do inside the system. There are over 16,000 different things to do inside the system, back behind the menu system. So either use the menu systems, go to different places, whatever, talk to other people, etc. Some of the things you can do. Now, we'll go ahead and just hit the reset button to come out. And after a few moments, we'll do our DHCP discover, and hopefully everything is good. Bam, okay. And you notice that in addition to IRATA.ONLINE, we mounted a few other file systems as well. I'll take and use the fs command, %fs command, to go to one of the others. You can have up to 4 file system bookmarks stored inside of your Spectranet, and you can use the %fs command to jump between any of them. We'll go to the second one, which is number 1. We see that everything is okay, and we can load it as well. And here we have access to a whole host of just an example menu. This menu is actually written in BASIC. If we take and break out of it, for example, and list it, we can see right here that we have a fairly basic program, but it's littered with Spectranet commands. So you can do simple Spectranet type commands to implement things like your own menus just fine. And yes, you can run your own TNFS server. The software is available. Put it on your Windows box. Expose a particular folder and store all your stuff there. It's like having a virtual disk, except it's over the network. Works. We'll go ahead and run in, and we'll pick a game here. Let's go to C, which is Winston's Picks, and we'll pick the classic Manic Miner. No instructions needed. So what it's doing right now is it's mounted a virtual tape using the tape in command, and it is loading that tape over the internet to load the game. And as you can see right here, playing the game just fine. Not only that, but as a final little bit for this particular part of the video, we will take and load the third mount point that I have, which is zx.cupo.be, which is a complete TOSEC archive of most available Spectrum software in a menu that you can scroll through. We do that by going to FS number 2. Since I have it set up here as FS number 2, and load it. And there we go. Come in. Load that particular section of the games here. We'll actually take, and just as an example here, we'll go ahead and pick the first one here. And you can see it's loading it in just fine. much faster than tape. And it's just streaming it along like nobody's business. There we go. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what is available like right out of the box. To serve, we can subsequently come over to the Speccy, go back, and be able to access them. Now that we have set this up, we can come back. I need to unmount 0 because I already have it mounted to something, so we use the umount command to do that, and mount a new one in its place. Now you can either use, for a particular host name, first we have to specify what slot we want to mount into, and we have to specify either an IP address or a host name. Now, for the purposes of demonstration here, I'm just going to use the host name, but you can use, I'm just going to use the IP address, but you can use the host name as well. To show that this is on my local network here. So now we've mounted this and it's here we go. And at this point, we could go ahead and just do a catalog to see what's listed. Now one thing to note here, you'll notice that I copied the files over with their long file names. And unlike other mass storage solutions for the ZX Spectrum, this actually keeps the long file names preserved. Not only that, but you can have directories that you can log, that you can go down into as well. So all we have to do to load a particular image, since these are all tapes, we just use the tape in command to load them. So go ahead and tape in. And give it the name of the tape we want to load, with extension if it's there. So in this case, .tap. Oop, 1943. Make sure you do it right. Oops, sorry. And we see we have our OK, and at this point you can use the tape load command to load the data just fine. And since this is off of the local network, it loads very quickly. So there we go. Bam, ready to go. Not only that, but you can also write things to TNFS machines as well. So we'll go ahead to TNFS servers as well, if the underlying file system has write permission. If you want to make a TNFS server public and you don't want people writing into it, all you have to do is set the appropriate file permissions underneath. Make it so other people can't write to it. Just say no write access. Okay, great, no problem. Boom. So we'll go ahead and we'll write a quick little program here that, for example, loads 1943 with a little message. And for this, you can use the Spectranet commands in the BASIC just fine. It handles them just as well. So we have our program there. Now I need to do a couple of things to make sure that this works correctly. I'm going to unmount 0 because that's currently mounted at IRATA.ONLINE. It gets reset each time you hit the reset. But we'll go ahead and put it back into place. So now let's say, and I can simply take and save it now. And we'll go ahead and save this just as an example as boot.zx, boot.zx. This file is, if you use the %load command and you don't provide a file name, it will look for this file by default. So we save the file, and if we look at the catalog, we'll see that the file is now there. Bam, ready to go. And if we now say we just mounted this particular folder and we load, oop, I forgot to put a save line 10. So if we run it there, boom. Yeah. So there we go. Now, in addition to this, let's say you have something here, and go ahead, start something here. I'll hit the blue NMI button here. We'll go into the Snapshot Manager, and since we've got this particularly loaded, we'll go ahead and save a particular snapshot here. And even though it's not saying it's doing anything, if you look down at the network indicators here, you'll see that it is saving that snapshot. And now it says the current is 1943 play. It's now saved. We can quit, exit out, go back into where we were, and in point of fact, if we reset the game here, and go all the way back out into BASIC, we're going to go ahead and remount my local file system here. First remembering to unmount 0, because I do have it used. Load that in. Now if we do a cat here, we'll actually see our 1943 play, which is a 128K snapshot, since this is indeed a 128K machine. And we could just as easily take and load snap right here. Load the snapshot in, and within a few moments it will literally drop us back exactly where we were. So, wow, there we go. Or we could, of course, do it from the snapshot menu. I hope that this has served as just a quick overview of what is possible with one of these Spectranet devices. There's a lot more that you can do, especially if you spend some time to take and write code in BASIC, in machine language, or in C. We could take and make a whole host of amazing applications that this particular, that the ZX Spectrum can leverage. And as you saw with IRATA.ONLINE, there are a whole host of new online services for retrocomputing users that can be used with devices like the ZX Spectrum. Now, I wanted to actually take and show SpecTank as well as an example of a game. I couldn't find the address for it, so hopefully I will take and make a video showing how that works coming in the next couple of days. But I wanted to go ahead and get this out to you guys as quickly as I possibly could. Again, the Spectranet is available at bytedelight.com, as well as the ZX HD if you don't have one of these devices as well. I highly recommend both of these devices for a very happy Spectrum. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Until next time, guys, have fun.